Hello everyone, I'm bringing you the Mannequin of the Month for July 2025 today, and I have two apologies to make. One is it'll be coming out rather late in the day on the 1st, and the reason for that is I'm actually filming on the 1st here early in the evening, because up to this point I'd lost my voice. My voice was quite badly affected by a cold I've had. You can probably hear I'm still a little bit stuffed up, but I wanted to wait and try and get over that as much as I could so it wasn't too noticeable and too much of an annoyance in the video. And that's the other apology, is I am still a bit bunged up, so bear with that please. The topic we're going to talk about today is the kit of a soldier of the 4th Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment, specifically 4 RAR/NZ, brackets ANZAC. This is a combined battalion including both Australian and New Zealand troops that was active during the Vietnam War, and from that point of view is quite interesting. The kit we have here is of an Australian soldier, but there was this combined battalion which incorporated both Australian and New Zealand infantry. So interesting in and of itself, and I highly recommend going and having a look at the sort of history of the unit and so forth. It's very interesting. That's not what we're talking about today. We're going to be looking at the kit here, and specifically this is from a very late war period, 1971, very much the tail end of Australian and in New Zealand involvement in the Vietnam War. The topic, of course, was chosen via a poll over on Patreon, and this is basically what came top in that poll. So this is what we're talking about today. The kit will be recognisable to a lot of you, I'm sure, those who are familiar with it generally and those who've perhaps watched previous videos talking about this. We basically have a full set, or not quite a full set, but a fairly representative set of late war Australian equipment, Australian uniform, and a little bit of US kit thrown on here as well, which we'll talk about as we move this round. So we'll start at the top as we normally do, and we have here the Australian-made jungle hat, which we've talked about previously on the channel. Very similar to its British predecessor, has simplified eyelets for ventilation up in the crown here, which we'll see as we move this round. Stitched brim, foliage loops around here, and it's made of a fairly heavyweight jungle green drill material. The uniform itself is the Australian standard green uniform, which includes this shirt and these trousers, both made in a green drill. The shirt has 2 breast pockets there with single button pocket flaps, as you can see. The trousers have the crossover belt design, which we've discussed previously on the channel. I've made a video looking at various different trousers which used this system of fastening the waist. And they of course have a leg pocket down here, and there are rear pockets which we'll mention as well as we move this round. This was the standard Australian jungle green uniform at the start of the Vietnam War, and was still worn extensively at the end, in spite of the fact that new patterns of uniform had been introduced and trialled and then issued on a larger scale. And you do see a mix and match of these uniform items we have here and those newer uniform items as well. In this instance, we have a matching set of the earlier jungle green uniform. As I say, still commonly seen towards the end of Australian involvement in Vietnam. The equipment, or what we can see of it at the front here, is Australian-made M1956 equipment, modified M1956 equipment. The suspenders are basically standard per the first version of these, without the snap hooks on the back, plain hooks all round, and this is the pattern which Australia continued with when manufacturing M1956. The belt, as you can see, is a horizontal weave belt. This is actually US made, and even very late in the war, it's not uncommon to see some US items, some US marked items which were in the system still being issued out. So we do have a US made belt there. The 2 ammunition pouches, which you can see here, one of them you can see clearly, this one obviously is obscured, and we'll get onto that in a moment. These are considerably taller than the US originals, and this of course does allow for 30 round magazines to be carried where required, and generally they just have a slightly greater carrying capacity, and obviously you can carry grenades and things in these as well. Certainly in Australian practice in Vietnam, it was less common to carry grenades slung on the outside of equipment and so forth, so that extra carrying capacity was important. As is quite typical throughout the war, slung from the right hand ammunition pouch in this instance, we have the toggle rope, which is a green nylon rope with a loop in each end. Just a very useful utility rope. Obviously these could be connected together and so forth and used for various different purposes. A very useful thing to carry, and as I say, this is a common way of carrying them, using the webbing loops on the side of the pouches. In US practice these were used to carry and secure grenades, but as I say, this is a common use for them in Australian service. Slung across the top of that equipment, we have here a bandolier for the 40mm grenades used in the M79 and latterly the M203 grenade launcher. Now the M79 of course is a standalone break open single shot grenade launcher. The M203 attaches beneath the barrel of the M16, and that has a sliding breech mechanism to load the grenades. And it's only at this stage in 1971 that I've seen any photographs, any evidence of Australian troops using the M203 in Vietnam. The US forces, 1969, 1970, it becomes increasingly common, replacing the M79. In Australian service, it seems to be with 4 RAR/NZ in 1971 that the M203 was finally issued out. The advantage of the M203, of course, being that you have both the rifle and the grenade launcher to hand in one package, effectively, whereas the M79 is simply a standalone single-shot grenade launcher. So the M203 has its advantages in that regard. This represents quite a light load of ammunition for the grenade launcher. You only have 6 rounds carried in here, as you can see. Each of these pockets individually carries a single 40mm grenade. It's likely, and you can't tell this in photographs, it's likely that extra grenades would have been carried in pouches or that simply a very light grenade load was carried. Interestingly, the US had introduced a nylon grenade vest to carry more ammunition and arguably more comfortably. This is quite an awkward way of carrying things in a bandolier that can bounce around and so forth. I have seen photographs of Australian troops using those in 1969, but alongside the M79. But oddly, Grenadiers in 4 RAR/NZ using the M203 seem to have bandoliers for the 40mm ammunition as we have here, as opposed to using the grenade vest, much as it was around, and there was clear evidence of use by Australian troops prior to this. It may simply have been that it was a different battalion that was issued those, and they didn't make their way over to 4 RAR/NZ. So just a point to note here. That's basically what we can see at the front. I suppose you do have the shoulder straps here for the pack, which we'll get onto in a minute. We'll talk about that when we move it around. But you can see here, the Australian field pack is carried, and the shoulder straps for this do have a quick release tab here to allow it to be dumped quickly. You can pull both of these, or even one of them, and just shrug it off. It does make it easier to dump the pack in a hurry if required. So just to note those at the front here, we'll see the pack in a minute, but that's an interesting feature to note while we have the Mannequin front onto the camera. So moving this round to look at the right-hand side here, we'll start at the top again, and we can see the ventilation eyelets in the side of the crown of the hat there. See the shoulder strap coming up from the pack across here, quite heavily padded, as you can see. The arm of the uniform coming down here with the double button cuff there, which is quite distinctive of this pattern of shirt. And as you can see here, an open cuff there, no gusset or anything to make these easy to roll up. They are worn unrolled in this instance. You can see the belt coming round here, and you can actually see here the M1910 hanger hook on the back of the canteen cover. These are an Australian version of the M1956 canteen cover or water bottle carrier. And these are basically very similar to the M1956, but they reintroduce M1910 hanger hooks, which have been deleted from the US design with the move to M1956. They do have the slide keepers on the back of as well, so they can be carried higher up on the belt or slung below it, as we have here, which makes them a bit more comfortable to carry, considering the field pack is carried on the back. You can see the side profile of the field pack here with the side pocket, quick release closure on the side there, the lower compartment here, and then the upper compartment here with a flap coming down. And we'll see more detail of that in just a moment when we move this round. So the main thing to talk about on the back here is the field pack. And as you can see, it's a fairly voluminous bit of kit, not compared to the US rucksacks at the time, but it's better than the 1937 pattern packs, which were being used prior to this, to a large extent, by Australian forces in Vietnam. This is all fairly late war equipment. It was the very late 1960s before the kit we're looking at here really started to reach troops in any numbers. And up to that point, there'd been a huge amount of sort of make, do, amend with bits of 1937 pattern used alongside M1956. It's a very interesting time period with no one man's kit the same as anyone else's in many cases because of the customization that was going on and the use of components from various different sets of equipment. But we have a fairly standardized set of components here, as I say, for the later war period. Up at the top here, we have a carry handle, as you can see there. The flap coming down here has 2 straps securing it. We have a loop here, and we have a piece of webbing here, which could be used to carry the entrenching tool on the back, a lower strap there to secure it if need be. So with an M1956 type cover, you could carry the entrenching tool on the back. It isn't carried in this instance. And then at the bottom here, we have 3 straps securing a lower compartment, which sort of opens out like an envelope. And in there, really the intention is you carry soft kit and so forth in the bottom here, and then hard kit in the top, with rations, tinned rations and things like that in the top. That's sort of the idea behind this pack. Better than what had gone before, but I've seen various people say still not really adequate for the loads that needed to be carried, and these were often very heavily packed out. In this instance, not too bad, probably a slightly shorter range patrol in terms of this not being too heavily loaded, not with too much extra kit slung on the outside and so forth. On the belt, we have 3 water bottle carriers here, or 3 canteen carriers. All of these are Australian-made versions of M1956. All of them have the hanger hooks on the back, as we've already discussed, and they have the darker green Australian water bottles in them. These are basically a direct copy of those used by the US and Canada before that, but made in a dark sort of forest green colour rather than the sort of more yellow olive drab tone of the US canteens, but otherwise identical in terms of the actual shape and the screw cap and everything else. So that's what we have on the back of the Mannequin here. Finally, looking at the right hand side of the Mannequin here, there isn't a huge amount more to talk about. We do have some insignia here. We have the Australian Military Forces badge up on the top of the left sleeve here. These are sometimes seen worn in the field. Insignia was generally pretty minimal on Australian uniform in Vietnam, certainly in the field, but we do have an example of that here, and you do see it occasionally. From the earliest days right the way through to the end of the war, you do occasionally see that badge worn on uniform. If we lift the arm out of the way here, you can see the shoulder strap of the pack coming down under here with the buckle there that allows this to be adjusted in, and the snap hook which attaches onto this lower D-ring here. There is an upper D-ring, so you could adjust where the strap was in terms of comfort and carrying the pack on the back in the most comfortable manner, depending on what other equipment you were carrying round on the back of the belt and so forth. So that's the left-hand side of the Mannequin here. One other thing I'll just mention is you can see the tape coming around here to support the bandolier for the 40mm grenades. This is actually 2 straps, one on each side, which have been knotted in the back to allow it to be carried in this manner. That does, of course, mean that these could be tied onto equipment and so forth as well. So having the strap essentially as 2 pieces was quite a good idea in that regard. It did mean you could carry these in various different ways. Just a final point to note here, looking at the left-hand side of the Mannequin there. So I hope you found it interesting looking at this. It's been nice to have some Australian Vietnam War era kit on the Mannequin again for a change, and obviously this is very late war in terms of Australian involvement and other Allied forces involved in Vietnam, of course. So from that point of view, it goes beyond what I've previously been interested in, really, and my interest more lies with the earlier years of the war and certainly the middle years and the run up to Tet, and then the 70s my interest had previously sort of dropped off a little bit. I'm not quite sure why, but that's certainly changing now. I'm getting more interested in that period of the pullback and the Vietnamization of the war and so forth. So, and the increased training in that regard as well of the South Vietnamese forces. So, as I say, it's been nice to put together the Mannequin from that point of view as well. I hope it's been interesting running through it here in the video. If you have found this interesting and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my videos and you'd like to support the channel and possibly vote each month on what's going to be covered in Mannequin of the Month, Patreon is linked down below, and it's the corporal tier over there which gives you the opportunity to vote each month on what's going to be covered. And of course PayPal is linked down below as well. You don't get any sort of special perks through PayPal, but the donations through PayPal are greatly appreciated, just as they are through Patreon. So thank you all very much indeed, all of you who support the channel using those 2 methods. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media and see photographs of these posted up over there, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch with me but you don't really use social media, there is an email address in the video description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.